Hey, welcome to the show. My name is John Peacock. Today is Wellbeing Wednesday. That's right. It is Wellbeing Wednesday. And I'm excited for every single Wednesday. My heart's desire has been and continues to be to come alongside of you to help equip you to keep finding your way forward. And that's exactly what we're doing. Today is episode 14 of season 2. We are taking some ground, folks. And joining me every single Wednesday, which is a delight and joy and is just amazing, is my friend Brian Silver. How are we doing, Brian?
Good.
Good to see you, bud.
Good to see you as well.
Yeah.
It's another beautiful day in Chicago.
Oh my gosh. You know, I'm wearing a hoodie. I love a good hoodie. And I can just tell you the month of September and October, 40% extra amount of joy, just every day.
Yeah.
The weather, the everything. I just love it.
Do apple cider donuts have anything to do with it?
Oh, you know me. They have a good amount to do with it. Oh, how you doing, man?
I'm good.
Hanging in?
Yeah. It's good. It's been a good week. Had a little baseball game, with the family in the backyard for my son, who was wanting to play, and had a little family gathering thing.
Love it.
I think I threw out my arm, maybe. But
I expect nothing less.
Obviously, I mean, go big or go home.
That's right. So, goes with the territory.
That's right.
It's so good. And you mentioned apple cider donuts. Right now, folks are watching this live on 2 different platforms. Those that are on Facebook, they're watching this on Facebook. Those that are not on Facebook, they're watching this on wearemission.online. So we have 2 live platforms going at the same time to try to serve more people. So I would love, in the comments right now, just let us know, what is your favorite fall tradition? What is your favorite fall tradition? It could be apple picking. It could be eating apple cider donuts. It could be, I don't know, could be sitting outside by a fire pit. There's so many options, but it's the fall and it's exciting. The Bears are undefeated. First time in 7 years. I mean, this is amazing. We are undefeated, Brian. And look at you. Bear down. Yeah. We almost gave it away. I don't know if you watched the game. We almost gave it away. But I'd love to go back through the comments and see what are your favorite fall traditions. And this is just such a great time of year. And so here's what we're doing right now on the show. If this is your first time checking this out, every Wednesday, Brian has been so kind to join us. He's a Christian therapist, and he's helping us build some strategies for the struggle. So many folks that are stuck, struggling, frustrated, exhausted. Brian has been offering some super, super helpful content. In many ways, it's free therapy every single Wednesday. For us, it's not free for Brian. He's giving of his time. So thank you for doing this. And today, what we're talking about, all of these have started with an R. Today is resisting being ruled by fear. Resisting being ruled by fear. I'm excited to hear what you got to say about this, Brian.
Me too. I hope I can come up with something all right on it. So resisting being ruled by fear. The reality is there's a ton of uncertainty right now.
Yeah.
A ton in pretty much categorically every area of our lives. And it's fairly natural and easy to get wrapped up in that. Yeah. Whether it's financial stuff, it's relational stuff, political stuff, educational stuff, health stuff. And those are just the obvious ones. But I mean, if we were to really dig, if we had people commenting, they could throw out a billion other things that are going on right now. So feel free to comment away, of course. But there's a ton of fear that naturally comes with some of these things. So if you're out of work, or if you're furloughed, or if you took a pay cut, there's fear about, well, how am I going to take care of the next bill, or how am I going to put food on the table for my family? If you're working and you're trying to get your kids through quarantine school, there's fear around how am I going to emotionally handle this? Will I be able to? I mean, there's all kinds of things that crop up in us that can overwhelm us, and sometimes it goes beyond just an anxiety thing, but it really does move into a fear. Like there's a fear that we will not be able to handle something, that we're going to buckle under the pressure, that we are potentially, we ourselves or somebody that we're caring for is in some level of danger. And, you know, there's nothing inherently unhealthy about fear. God gave us a full range of emotions. So there are times where it's quite appropriate to be fearful. I remember I was doing a youth event out in California, and I finished the youth event. I finished praying, and you know, my head was down. And as I opened my eyes when I finished praying, I opened my eyes just in time to watch a black widow crawl up my pant leg.
No way.
Totally true story. I have to tell you, that felt like healthy fear.
Yes, yes.
I did live to tell the tale, fortunately.
Oh
but there are times when fear makes good sense, you know, from that standpoint. The reality is, fear is not a sensical thing; it's an emotional thing. So it doesn't have to make sense. You can be afraid of anything, and we can validate that. What we want to do is, when we look at this spectrum, okay, so there's places where it makes really good sense to be afraid, and we've got this instinct, we've got this emotion to help us, right? Hopefully I'm not going, yeah, enjoy my leg, bud, you know, hang out there as long as you like. That would not be healthy, right? I need that fear to kind of kick my butt into gear to do something about it.
Yeah.
But there's a point on that line where it starts to become life disrupting. It's actually holding us back from doing the things that we need to do. And so we want to learn how to be able to engage fear in a healthy way, and to work through fear in a way that does not interrupt our life. Some of you have maybe heard of the fight or flight response. That's a pretty common fear response. A lot of people will talk about it as fight, flight, or freeze. And so it's this idea that I'm going to react in some kind of irrational, unhelpful sort of way. I'm going to run, or I'm just going to freeze up. And, you know, there is an alternative to this. We've talked in the past about the living in the and, the validate and. Okay, so when it comes to fear, this is really important. The word I've come across for this, and I don't know who to give it credit for, but instead of flight, fight, or freeze, we face.
Oh, I like that. So instead of fighting or fleeing, you know, flight or freeze, we face.
We face.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
And so facing means, okay, yeah, this is terrifying. And rather than panicking, rather than running, rather than freezing, I'm going to find the best way forward. Okay.
That's good.
So I got a story for you if you guys are up for it.
Oh, I love a good story.
Back when I lived in California, notice a lot of my stories come from California. I do like California. Back when I was living in California, I had a buddy who kept trying to convince me to go rock climbing. And I'm pretty terrified of heights. And so I kept politely declining. And my buddy, his name is Brian as well. One day he said, look, Brian, okay, how about if you just hike with me into the Malibu mountains? I won't make you rock climb. I promise. I said, okay, you promise? Promise. Okay, fine. So I agree to go, and we head into the mountains, and we're hiking and we're talking, and I'm directionally challenged. I have no idea where we're going. I'm not paying close attention. I'm a people person, so I'm sitting talking with Brian. Brian's paying attention to stuff. And about 45 minutes in, we get to the edge of, you know, the cliffs of insanity. We get to the edge of this cliff that drops about 80 feet or so. And he says, okay, we're going to rappel down this cliff. And I said, Brian, we already talked about this. You promised no rock climbing.
But we're not.
That's right. And he said, no, Brian, I promised no rock climbing. This is rappelling. That's different.
Mm.
And guess what? If you don't do it, you have to hike your way back out on your own.
Wow, what a good friend.
Yeah, yeah. So I'm standing probably a good 12, 14 feet from the cliff, from the edge of the cliff. I have not seen over the edge. I can just, I can see sort of the horizon past it. So I know that it just drops forever. As far as I'm concerned, 80 feet for somebody who climbs, I'm sure is nothing, but
might as well be 1,000,000 feet. Might as well be El Capitan.
That's right. Anyway. That's right.
Big wall.
So
big wall.
I am crouched to the ground, leaning as far away from the edge as I possibly can, shaking, literally shaking. And laughing because, he's ribbing me about it and, hey, we're going to do this. And so he's hooking me up to stuff. And he says, here's what we're going to do, Brian. What we need you to do is you're going to walk to the edge. Mm-hmm. You're going to look so you see where you're going. Then you're going to turn around and you're going to climb down. And I said, there's no way that I'm doing that. What I eventually ended up doing was I decided, okay, if I stay here and I try to hike out, I'm going to get eaten by a bear. Mm-hmm. But I don't really have a choice here. I've got to go with Brian. So I said, Brian, here's the only way it's going to work. I'm going to turn around and I'm just from the 14 feet back that I am, I'm just going to walk backwards off the cliff. I can't look. Okay. He said, that's scarier. Like, just go up to the edge. I said, no, not for me. So what I did was I stayed with my eyes fixed to the anchor point that I was attached to.
Okay. Yeah.
And I just walked backwards and dropped off the cliff.
You did it.
I did it. And I got to the bottom of the cliff and man, I'll tell you what, I felt like I had conquered the world.
Yeah.
I mean, I was exhilarated and I was alive.
You're alive.
It was great. But the thing that made that possible was I did not stare at the fear. I stared at the anchor.
There we go.
And that's truly the only thing that got me through that. This is a critical component. So if we're gonna go with the face instead of fight, flight, or fear, if we're gonna face it, we have to. Yeah. Fight. Thank you. Fight, flight.
I love correcting a therapist.
I love being corrected. Thank you. That's great. That's actually not true. I probably don't, but I appreciate it from you. No, I've got lots of work to do, and my brain gets confuddled all the time.
Oh, good.
So instead of fight, flight, or freeze, it's face, right? Yeah. And the only way we're going to do that well is if we have an anchor other than the fear. So we can validate the fear. Like, I was still shaking walking backwards. Mm-hmm. I'm aware of what's behind me, but I am not going to stare at that fear. That is not going to help me. Okay. So pause for a second. Just to everybody listening, what fears are you confronted with right now? And do you have an anchor that you can stare at other than the fear when you're afraid? And think about that for a minute. If you don't, there's a pretty good chance, our eyes gravitate toward the thing that's got, the strongest pull for our attention. It's a pretty good chance that you are staring at that fear. And the longer we stare at it, the bigger it gets. It's like standing at the edge of a high dive if you're afraid of jumping. Yeah. The longer you stand there,
that's right.
The scarier it is.
The longer you stay there. That's right.
Right.
Ooh.
So what fears are you confronted with right now? And if you have a pen and paper, I'd encourage you to write it down and start thinking about what kind of anchor can you use? So I'm going to give you a couple of psychological anchor thoughts, and then I want to talk a little bit about a spiritual
awesome
anchor here. So one common go-to anchor for managing fear is some form of mindful meditation, a deep breathing exercise, a counting exercise. What we're doing is we're giving our brains something else to focus on. We're giving our senses something else to invest in. So it could be something as simple as having a paperclip in your hand and just wiggling the paperclip and feeling the paperclip. It doesn't matter what it is, but we're finding something that that our brain can lock itself onto instead of what it's staring at. A lot of times this involves other people. So calling a friend, you know, a friend can invest in a meditation with you, right? Communing with somebody else could be a meditative focus on something other than the fear. But it's finding some other form of anchor in the form of some kind of exercise or connection, you know, mental exercise or connection. But physical exercise would work as well. In fact, working out, going for a run. Lots of different things that we can anchor ourselves to. Now, these anchors, they don't make the fear go away. They just give us a different place to focus. Okay. They are great tools. And being that many of our listeners are spiritual, just to be really clear, they're just tools. So if you're really overwhelmed by fear, you know, being able to validate and move forward helps with what's called graduated exposure, meaning, you know, little by little, you get more and more accustomed to facing that fear and things get better. They don't necessarily make you any less afraid, because the breathing doesn't feel like sanctuary to you. There's nothing that's protective about that as much as it helps you slowly face the fear. Right? That's great. I mean, I've used this for myself with heights. It's been awesome. You know, I'm still afraid of heights, and I can still face heights anytime that I need to. So that's a fantastic tool. But some of you might say, you know, I want something that, you know, the anchor itself has a little bit more kind of, let's say, strength to it. Well, you know, skills themselves are not going to do it. They're just skills. So that we'd have to venture into the spiritual side of things to get anywhere close to that. There is a passage in the Gospels. Jesus is taking a nap on a boat, and his disciples are freaking out because they're in the middle of a gigantic storm. And they're trying to wake Jesus. Jesus, come on, bud. Like, boat's gonna capsize. This is crazy. And Jesus wakes up and he looks around at the wind and the waves and the storm, and he says, "Shh, peace, be still." Water's like glass. Storm stops. And the disciples say, "Who is this man that even the wind and waves obey him?" And so this is where the spiritual side of the question of fear is going to sort of just outweigh the psychological side, in that the spiritual side offers us something more than just skills. Skills are great. I use them a ton myself and with others. But if we want more than just skills that help us get accustomed to the fear and be able to face it, if we want something that's going to actually create a an anchor that is safe, sort of like the anchor that I was tethered to, where I could actually trust that if I let go, I wasn't going to fall.
Yep.
That's really only going to be found on the spiritual side of things like that, like what we're talking about here. And I mentioned in a previous episode in another in the first season, I talked about a word, distadzo. There's another storm scene in the scriptures where Jesus is walking on the water in a storm, and he calls Peter out.
Yeah.
And Peter comes walking toward him, and he's looking at Jesus, and then he notices the waves, he notices the storm, and it says he becomes afraid. Now, this word afraid actually describes more like a sense of reverence, like authority. So it's not the issue that he's afraid, but it's that he's actually ascribing authority to the wind and the waves. Now remember, Jesus says, "Shh, peace, be still." It stops. Who is this that has authority over even the wind and the waves? But he looks at the waves. He says, "Oh, scary," like authority level scary. And then they make it back into the boat. Jesus takes him back into the boat, and he says, "Peter, why did you doubt?" Doubt, distadzo. Die meaning to, stadzo meaning like standing. Why are you standing in two different places? Why are you saying that I have authority and so does the wind? You can't serve two masters. You can't face fear and know that you're safe if you're giving fear authority. So be afraid and give me the authority.
Wow. Yep. That's so good, man. I think that's where so many folks are standing right now, is, in that in many ways is I think so much of this season, Brian, generally we stay at like a lower level of this is political or this is whatever. I actually think this is all about discipleship. I think everything going on right now is about discipleship. And I just fully believe this is an opportunity for us to grow spiritually in a way like perhaps we've never grown before. So this is about discipleship, and we're out there, and there's wind and there's waves, and Jesus is out there too. Yeah. That's good, man.
Yeah. And here's the thing. So Jesus says, the disciples say, who is this man that has authority over the wind and the waves? If Jesus has authority over the wind and the waves, could he have authority over the messy political unrest? Could he have authority over coronavirus? Could he have authority over anything and everything that we are terrified of right now? The answer is yes, he has authority over everything. Everything. We scramble, all of us, trying to manage our fears on our own. And a lot of times the fears get bigger. We make the fears bigger for ourselves, and we make the fears bigger for the people around us.
Yeah.
Because we're scrambling to manage that fear in some kind of frantic, I'm going to stare at this fear, be overwhelmed by it, and that's how I think I'm going to resolve it kind of scenario. And it just doesn't work. If you are in a tough financial position, staring at the dollars dwindling from your account is not going to help you.
That's right.
Seeking God, using good skills to calm your system so that you can stay rational and you can keep doing your due diligence and be responsible. Absolutely. Seeking God, praying, speaking with God's people, getting encouragement. These things are all far better anchors than staring at the dwindling account.
Mm.
You spoke, John, on Sunday about, you said import truth, export courage.
Yeah.
Right? In Psalm 56, David is being chased by enemies. And he says in verses 3 and 4, he says, when I am afraid, I put my trust in you. In God, whose word I praise. In God I trust and am not afraid. What can mere mortals do to me?
Wow.
In God, whose word, you said import truth, export courage. In God, whose word I praise. I've been talking to my daughter about bravery lately. You know, she's had to face some things that are scary for her. We've talked about that the bravery is not about not being afraid. It has nothing to do with that.
Yep.
But that it's about being willing to take a step even when we are afraid. And this idea of saturating ourselves with the truth of who God is and what his word says about how we can trust him, it doesn't necessarily make us not afraid, but it does give us the footing that we need to be able to step forward anyway. So we can walk the line of fear, and be real about that, and be overwhelmed by it, and still make the decisions that are going to move us forward, that are going to keep us from getting locked in ourselves in that fear. Now, I would say there's probably one other thing that's worth mentioning that I don't want to miss. I mentioned the responsibility piece, right? So not being ruled by fear doesn't mean, okay, bank account's dwindling. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to meditate in a Zen state and I'm going to wait for the money to fall. We have responsibility.
Yeah.
We have due diligence to do what we can to face the fear, not stare at the fear, but face the fear, right? We also have a responsibility to be respectful of others in our fear or in our lack thereof, whatever it might be. When we start to feel freer of our fear, you know, many of us would call ourselves followers of Jesus. And Jesus would say, we have to look out for being a stumbling block to other people. And if we are around other people who are still staring at that fear, there needs to be a level of respect on our end to join with them and walk with them through that fear, rather than dismissing it. So there's a huge difference between due diligence, being respectful of others in their fear, and being ruled by fear. Our job is simply to face the fear well, in a way that we're invested, we're respectful, and we're focused on a different anchor.
I love it, ma'am. I think the word picture will stay with me for a long time I'm so glad your friend Brian, at least for our sake, invited you on that epic adventure, and that word picture of what, you know, because the choice is yours. You're not a victim of this. You actually have a choice to choose what anchor point you are going to really fix your eyes on. And that is so empowering. I think people right now are feeling empowered. I hope they're feeling empowered. I'm feeling empowered when I think about the fears that I'm dealing with and battling through every week. It's just like incredible to know that I'm empowered to choose the anchor point. Like, what am I truly going to fix my eyes at and fix my eyes on? I'm not going to dismiss it. I love the and. I think that's so important for us this morning, early this morning, I was going through my Bible reading plan and in Galatians 6, like we're going to carry one another's burdens. And so I think part of that, is for us to acknowledge, not dismiss it, not make them feel any ounce of shame about this. No, we're going to come alongside them. And at the same time, I think we're going to help them hopefully kind of refocus and choose a different anchor point. As we finish up here, Brian, I'm reminded of the old hymn, Turn Our Eyes Upon Jesus. You remember that one?
Yeah.
I'm not going to sing it, but I'm tempted to sing it. You could play it on guitar, but, turn our eyes upon Jesus, look full in his wonderful face, and the things of earth will grow what? Do you remember the next word?
Strangely dim.
Strangely dim. I love that. It's not that the things of earth aren't already lit up. It's not saying that those aren't real. No, they're lit up. They're illuminated. But isn't it amazing? Some would even say strange, how the fears that are so illuminated can grow strangely dim in the light of his glory and grace. And we just need to turn our eyes upon Jesus and choose him as our anchor point. This has been so helpful. Brian, I love you, man. You are equipping us. You are using your gifts to help so many of us. Let's be a community of the and, acknowledging and at the same time encouraging with tons of love, tons of kindness, tons of patience, as all of us choose an anchor point that is far better than any other, and that is the face of Jesus. So love you, bro. Thank you for this. So good. We'll see you guys on Friday as we continue. Have a great day.